Hey, this is Michael with Digital T-Shirt Shop. Today is, we're almost a week past Thanksgiving. November 28th. The month is screaming by. On a few of my sites, I've had my sales pick up. I had, yeah, on one of my Amazon sites, I think a 7 or 8 shirt order. One of my Etsy sites, a 5 or 6 shirt order, and then a handful of other orders here and there. Which is nice because I've had a lot of days where my sales have just plain sucked. So, anyways, so I'm up. It's like 5 a.m. Doing some work, trying to print, trying to follow up on some other drop shipping that I've got going on. And I don't have any deep pearls of wisdom to share with you today. I've just got to do some work. But I was thinking this morning, and I've got little kids, and my little kids are, uh, two in elementary school and one in junior high school, and I was contemplating this morning the not how vulnerable they are, but how teachable they are at that age. Um, and my responsibility as a father to talk to them, to teach them. It's easy to kind of pass the buck there and to, allow uh, the school system or the neighbors or the religious leaders or whoever it might be that they interact with to give them most of their learning and knowledge and things like that. But I try not to let that happen. I try not to let everything just take place in school and everything just take place in church or wherever it is. Uh, I try to do some of it at home as well when I have, those moments, teachable moments and things like that with the kids, and try to, even when there's not a teachable moment, to take time to spend with them. But man, I could do so much better. I really could do so much better. I could do so much better taking more time with them, so much better broadening the subject matter in which I take opportunity to teach them, um, and read to them and things like that. Now I know the kids really enjoy, and I don't know, maybe I had to think about this. I remember watching that Winnie the Pooh movie the other day, and the Christopher Robin. And I remember watching, and Dad wanted to read to the little girl, to his daughter, about economics or something like that. And I remember sitting there thinking, oh, God, I don't think like that. I would never sit there and read my kid a business book or an economics book or something like that. Even that would put me to sleep. Uh, uh, but I have, when I was young, I wasn't a big reader. I didn't read a lot. I wasn't really into that. And as I haven't wanted my kids to necessarily feel the same way. Although I've got one of my kids is a pretty big reader. He likes to be like, yeah, I read so much, and he likes to actually sit down and read, but most of the others don't. And I never did as a kid. Um, but as I've sat down and read like illustrated classics to him and things like that, um, I've realized that I probably should have taken some time to read more as a kid and been more familiar with a lot of those different types of books and things that I never took the time to read. If it came out on a movie, I read the movie, watched the movie, but then as I've read them with the kids, I've realized that the books are so much more different than the movies. I also like to make them sit down and watch classic movies and things like that as well. Um, so there's a lot of things that you can portray through uh, history and talk about history and things that happened in old movies or movies that are set in an old setting. Things about customs and things about manners and history and all sorts of things. I remember sitting down and watching To Kill a Mockingbird with my daughter, the old one that was made, God, it must have been made in the 50s. I think it was black and white still. And, we had a great discussion about some of the things that took place in history because we sat down and watched it and had a discussion on it. And honestly, if you sat and you thought about some of the things that they say and some of the ways that they acted and some of the ways people were treated. You take a movie like that today and it can kind of, it's one of those things that people, I don't know. I haven't heard so much that movie. You worry that some days people are going to take these classics and ban them because of some of the content in them. And, but I think at the same time, there are real discussions that can be had and real learning that can take place by watching some of these things and having a good discussion on the history and things that took place in the past and learning from those things. Which is, kind of goes back to that whole idea of a parent taking the time to talk to their kids. I can share with them my wisdom. You can call it brainwashing all you want. I don't really care, but there are things that we believe, there are things that we believe and there are things that we want our kids to believe, and where's that going to come? I don't feel as though the government is the know-all of all things, and I don't feel that the government is right with all things. And I feel that parents have a responsibility to ensure that their kids know and understand. And a lot of that can, if the parent takes the time, really no matter the subject, and even if the parent's not 100% correct, I know you can have incorrect ideas passed generation to generation through families and learning and customs and what you're taught in the home, but at the same time, some of the greatest traditions and the greatest morals and the greatest foundations can be built through learning in the home. What a parent takes, what the parent teaches a child. And those things can, include etiquette and manners and respect and all sorts of things, just as long as the parent takes the time to teach them. And I don't know, I was thinking about a lot of that today and realizing that I could do so much better. And I know my daughter, being 13, has a bunch of classes in school that, and part of it's her willingness to talk to me. So, that I'd like to reinforce a few things with, and I haven't taken the time to bring them up. And I can do much better at that. My boys, back to the reading, I've wanted to read them a little bit different books because I haven't wanted them to grow up not knowing the stories. And so I've taken the time to read them those illustrated classics that are just kind of on a juvenile level, but oftentimes I wonder if maybe they are too advanced. Even though as we've sat and we've talked about them, the kids have understood the stories, and I've read a few dozen of them. But I sat down last night to try to read to them, and got frustrated because Robbie wouldn't sit still. And then I was actually reading to them the Christmas Carol, and as I sat there reading Christmas Carol, I just pulled it up on Google, and I was surprised. Well, actually, I was really surprised at the language in it. Now, two things about the language in it. One was I think it was very, very well written. I was impressed with the dialogue. I'd never read the book before. I've watched the movie a dozen times and all the variations of the movie dozens of times, and seen the plays and all of those things. And but as I was reading the book, I was like, "Holy cow! This is actually written really, really well." And there were words that I was not familiar with, and I realized as I was reading it that I kind of had this realization that there can be a real beauty in the way that things are written, and I thought that I only read the first few pages of the book to Isaiah last night. But then the inverse of that's what I was thinking when I stopped and I finished and I thought about Isaiah 9, sitting in bed with his covers pulled over his head. He probably didn't enjoy it as much as Dad was enjoying it. And so, it goes back to that Christopher Robin and what's the best thing to really read them? What's the thing that's going to engage them the most and captivate them the most? And I'm sure it is not a complex written story that's one difficult, even some of the language in it, the words that I didn't know how to pronounce because I wasn't familiar with the words. And, and then the story being more complex, and I'm pretty good at stopping and talking to them about it and asking questions about what they were reading and stuff like that. So we can have some discussion about it. Like last night after we read those chapters, I started talking to Isaiah about the idea of somebody being hot or cold because of how it depicted Marley and Scrooge as being, how they depicted Scrooge as being cold-hearted. And, it's funny because as I talked to Isaiah, I'm like, so what does he mean when he's talking about him being cold? Because it's cold outside, And, it's little things like that you can teach them the innuendos of, and meanings of things, the more complex meaning of things, and even just as simple as that, and when somebody is hot and when somebody is cold and when somebody is warm, and those personal relationships that we have with people. So I don't know, just because it's a whole bunch of rambling about things, I guess, today, and that I didn't intend necessarily to do, but I don't know. I can do better. That's it. And and those few moments that I have every day to spend some quality um, with them. And in the meantime, I'll print some shirts.